Alright guys, thanks for coming back. This week on the handle episode, we're going to do Karelian Birch. This is stabilized Karelian Birch from Russia. This was just shipped to me. I've got a whole bunch of neat stuff that's coming from Russia. I'm actually going to do a hidden tang knife with this, and I'm going to mix a little piece of African blackwood, made it up against it. It's not quite going to be at that angle, but I'm going to put a little sliver of African blackwood between this and the guard of the knife. And as I work this, we'll see how it works, how hard it is, what kind of sandpaper to use, what kind of speeds and feeds to use to go ahead and grind this wood. And then once again, at the end of the video, we'll work on the best methods to get this finished out too. So this looks like it was a resin stabilization. It's really heavy and the pores are completely filled. So I should be able to get this to come to a high luster. It smells good. I went ahead and I prepared both the surfaces on the Karelian Birch and on the African Blackwood. I squared them up with an extremely coarse grit 36 grit belt, so I'll have a nice mechanical bond between the surfaces. I cleaned them thoroughly with acetone just in case either one of the blocks have an oil that might resist this epoxy. I know the African Blackwood it's pretty oily, so I always like to clean it with acetone first. Alright, so I'll call that good on my epoxy. Here's a little handling note for you. When you're doing something like this, and you've got a block that's going to be bigger than your handle, it's a good idea to put the side of the block that you want to see on the flat side where you're gluing up, because this is the side you'll cut off to true up the block. So if you want to see something on your wood, put that against your flat surface. And that way, when your handle's done, that piece of the wood is closer to the surface. Do it. We're locked down there, we're locked down here, we've got them pushed together, everything's symmetrical. That's going to be awesome. We're going to get just a little black disc in between that and our Karelian Birch. I haven't cut this off yet. After this is ready to go, I'll measure out how long my handle will be, and I'll cut this off so I can use this piece in a handle down the road. Here we are. I went and now you can see that I knocked a little bit off the bottom to create this angle. So now when I put this up here, you'll notice what I wanted to show you was the line of the knife here. If I line it up like this with the block right there, it flows through the knife and it doesn't kick up. Now I'm not going to put the knife right there. I'm actually going to put the knife a little bit farther down because that offers me some wiggle room. After I get everything glued up, I'll be able to cut a little bit off the top. I've got plenty of material on the bottom. I'm not going to drop this handle down much, so I'm just going to put it right there. Right, kind of shoot the gap in the middle. Although I do want it as high as possible because that's where the highest figure is on the wood. I'm just going to take my pen and I'm going to draw around my tang. I need to create the area that I will be cutting out. And I like to do this right here with a pen or a Sharpie, because ultimately this piece of wood where the markings are will get ground off through the handling process. I'm going to go ahead and mark out where the tang is, because the last thing you want to do is cut into where your tang pocket is when you're shaping the handle. I have done it. It's a super bummer. Alright, so I'm going to jump over to the milling machine, and I'm going to take this right here, get it all set up with the right size drill bits for the width of the tang, and we're going to drill this out. epoxy set good. Go ahead and trim your pin. So I've got this all glued up, guys. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over here and let's see, can you see that? Yes. You can see my general outline that I'm gonna go for right there. I'm gonna go ahead, before I true up anything this way, I've got extra material on this side and it's a little wonky. Before I do any of that, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cut this profile out because I can still see where my tang is. So I don't want to flatten this off or cut this off because then I won't have any reference of where this tang is unless I make a template. So no big deal. In order for me to do this without having to make a template and redo what I've already done, I'm going to go ahead and profile the outside of the handle shape. And then I can go and I'll show you some cool tricks on laying this blade out on a 1, 2, 3 block and scribing some lines that'll get you perfect lines so that you can shave this material off on the grinder and square this up to the blade. Super cool. Let's go ahead and get this ground out. Okay, so now that we've got the general profile done, I'm going to show you a trick here. You've probably seen this in some of my other videos. You go ahead and tear your tape back off because you need to get to this flat right here. You gotta access this flat to get this right. That is your perfect flat that you can use throughout this whole process. Of course, the tape really wants to stick. Then I take a 1, 2, 3 block, which is one of these guys here. Machinists use these. It's a 1, 2, 3 block. You can buy these really cheap. And I put tape on it so it protects the knife and the guard. Okay? And then if you lay the knife on here like this, with the flat against the 1, 2, 3 block, and you take your height gauge and you scribe a line, the line that you scribe on the handle is going to be absolutely parallel to your flat right here, to this flat area. So that's what I like to do. Let's see, let's go ahead and figure out. Alright, so that's perfect. Excellent. On that side, let's go ahead and scribe my line. And then I'm going to go and true this side up, which there's not a whole lot of material to take off on this side. Make sure you keep it nice and flat. So, this is the first step in shaping the handle, is cutting off the excess and truing it up. And now it's time to whip out all my different files. We're going to shape the guard. I've got some lines on here, but realistically I'm just going to kind of go through. I'm going to clean up what I've already done and just establish my profiles, and then I'll move right into hand sanding. So I'm going to bring you in and show you what this looks like. So see, now I've got some, so I've taken this bevel right here, right into the guard. So it flows right into the guard on both sides. This flat flows into the guard. Now you'll see in the corners is where I really need to get in there and I need to clean up a little bit. liking that file for that. Let's get in there with kind of a round, half round file. Thanks. So this file is half round on one side. Much better. That way I'm not actually cutting grooves into anything here. Perfect. And we start the hand sanding process. Actually, I've already started. I already did the top, the back, and the bottom profile all the way around. Now I'm going to do both the flats on the sides, and then I'll go around and I will clean up these. I want to do the profile and then the flats first. That way, all the material that's going to be removed will be removed, and then I can dial these facets in with the right thicknesses so they all line up and they're all the same size. If I did the facets first and then I went and I sanded the flat, I could reduce the size of the facet, or also if I did the facet first and I did the profile, I can reduce the size of the facet. So instead of having to go back and redo these several times, sand the profile all the way around, sand it out to 500 grit, and then sand your flats out to 500 grit, starting at your guard first so that you don't pull the metal into the handle material. In fact, that's a really good tip, guys. If you sand this guard right into the handle material, you're going to embed this metal into the wood, and it will oxidize and it will change the color of your wood, especially if you have a lighter color wood bumped up against your guard. So what I like to do is I start here and I'll focus on the guard and I'll sand and get it sanded out without dragging it into the wood, and then I'll change to a new piece of sandpaper and I'll sand this area until it's right, and then I'll blend the two together, going from the wood into the metal, trying not to drag metal particles back into the wood pores. So that's actually really important. I'll show you how I do that. I just start right here on the metal and I'll sand the metal. This happens to be nickel silver, so it sands really easily actually. Sand it first, get it sanded out to where you want it. Just like that. So you keep going until all your scratches are gone, and then I'll go to new sandpaper and I'll sand into the metal like this, trying to push the metal particles away from the wood. Here's another really good tip for you guys. This is something I haven't shared with you before. When I do my guards, I fit my guards right up to my knife like this. So I shape the guard after it's glued up. Well, the problem is when you shape this and you get these perfect lines, this is really sharp. The top of the guard is perfect 90 degrees, and of course you've polished it out, so that's an extremely sharp edge. So what I do is I take a file here. It would probably be a good idea to take a safety file that doesn't have a bite on one side, that you know, doesn't file on one side. I don't do that because I just take real good care when I do this. But what I do is I come in here and I just deburr that leading edge. You don't want to touch the top of your guard because you can't ever get to that again to clean it up. You're just cutting the edge off. And actually, it's almost like when you sharpen a knife, you get a wire edge. You could just bust that burr off. You want to follow your angles all the way around so that you got this nice 45-degree break right there on the edge of your guard. It's nothing crazy. It's just a finishing touch that I think you ought to do. You know, I mean, if you're using this knife and you run your hand in front of it, the last thing you want to do is have your knife cut you. This was a really nice Damascus blade that I put together. This is wolf-tooth Damascus on this Tonto. Moving right into the Karelian Birch handle with the African Blackwood spacer. This handle wood was really unique to work with. With it being stabilized, the pores were completely filled in this wood, and it was very dense. It sanded easily and was able to bring to a high luster very easily. I would recommend using this wood in conjunction with another hardwood any day of the week. The figure on this wood was absolutely spectacular, and I just can't complain with how it came out. It's absolutely beautiful. I didn't have to use any polish on this. All I did was sanded it out to a high grit sandpaper. I think I took this to 1000 grit total. And then I used a little bit of Mother's cutting compound to finish this up. You could put a little wax on top of it if you wanted to seal it in, but you certainly don't have to. I prefer the more natural look on these handles. Hey, thanks for watching the show, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, you should go and check out some of my other handling episodes on my handle playlist. I'm going to put a link to it in the cards right here. Thanks. See you guys next time.